Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. For context, I'm a software developer who works entirely from home. I rent the ground floor apartment in a small 4-unit building that was recently renovated. The place is perfect for my needs because I have a dedicated office space and the landlord advertised it as ideal for professionals who work remotely. The building is older but nicely updated and I pay premium rent for what I get. My landlord lives in the unit directly above me. She's in her late 50s, owns the entire building, and from day one made it clear she considers herself very hands-on with management. I should have seen the red flags when she mentioned during the lease signing that she likes to keep close tabs on all her tenants to make sure everyone follows the rules properly. The problem started almost immediately after I moved in. My work requires expensive equipment, and I frequently receive high-value deliveries. We're talking specialized computer components, professional cameras, server hardware, that kind of stuff. Individual packages can be worth anywhere from a few hundred to several $1,000s. The building's mail situation is basically non-existent for packages. There's a small cluster of mailboxes by the front entrance, but they're only big enough for letters and small items. Anything larger gets left by the front door or on individual doorsteps. The front entrance has no security cameras, no buzzer system, nothing. It's basically an open invitation for package thieves. After my second week living there, I had my first package go missing. It was a graphics card worth about $800 marked as delivered but nowhere to be found. I figured it was just bad luck with porch pirates and filed a claim with the shipping company. Then it happened again the next week. Then again. Always expensive items, always marked as delivered during business hours when I was home working, but somehow I never heard the delivery truck or doorbell. I started getting suspicious. I brought up the security issue with my landlord, suggesting maybe we could install some basic cameras or a package lockbox system. She immediately shot down the idea, saying it was too expensive and unnecessary. She told me I should just have packages delivered to my office instead. I explained that I work from home, so that wasn't an option. She just shrugged and said that was my problem to solve. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I researched high-end smart security systems and found a company that specializes in custom installations for tech professionals. The system I chose wasn't cheap, but it was exactly what I needed. The setup included a smart lock with facial recognition technology, motion sensors, and high-definition cameras with night vision. Everything was integrated into a single control panel that could be managed through a proprietary app. The system could log exact timestamps for every entry and exit, maintain detailed records of all access attempts, and send real-time alerts to my phone. Most importantly, it used a two-factor authentication system with both physical keys and digital access codes. The master administrator could create temporary codes, permanent codes, and emergency overrides. It was basically like having a miniature version of corporate-level security for my apartment door. Before installing anything, I checked my lease carefully. The document clearly stated that tenants were responsible for the maintenance and security of their individual units. It also allowed for non-permanent security improvements as long as the landlord was provided with an emergency access method for legitimate maintenance needs. I contacted my landlord and explained what I planned to install. I offered to provide her with a physical override key that would be held by a local attorney's office, accessible to her with proper documentation in case of genuine emergencies. She seemed annoyed but agreed, probably figuring it would save her from dealing with any more of my security complaints. The installation took a full day. The technician was impressed with the setup and walked me through all the features. He explained that the system was designed for high-security applications and would maintain detailed logs of everything. He also mentioned that the administrative controls were extremely robust, meaning whoever had master access could completely control user permissions, access codes, and system settings. For about a month, everything was perfect. My packages were secure, I could monitor all delivery activity from my office, and I finally felt like my expensive equipment was safe. The system worked flawlessly, and I was getting alerts every time someone even walked near my door. That's when I discovered what had really been happening to my missing packages. It was a Tuesday morning when I got an alert that a package had been delivered. I was in the middle of a client call, so I made a mental note to grab it when I finished. The delivery notification said it was my new camera lens, worth about $500. When my call ended 20 minutes later, I went to collect the package. It wasn't there. I immediately pulled up the security footage to see what had happened. What I saw made my blood boil. The delivery driver had placed the package right outside my door at 10:47 a.m., exactly where it was supposed to be. At 11:03 a.m., my landlord appeared in the footage. She was wearing a bathrobe and slippers, clearly having just woken up. She looked around casually, picked up my package like it belonged to her, and walked back upstairs to her apartment. The facial recognition system had logged her identity automatically. The timestamp was crystal clear. There was absolutely no ambiguity about what I was watching. I spent the next hour going through weeks of archived footage. The pattern was unmistakable. Every single one of my missing packages had been taken by my landlord within 15 to 30 minutes of delivery. She had a system down. She must have been watching for delivery trucks or getting notifications somehow. The audacity was unbelievable. This woman was charging me premium rent and then stealing my deliveries like some kind of petty criminal. I was furious, but I forced myself to stay calm and think strategically. I saved all the relevant video clips and compiled them into a single file with timestamps and facial recognition confirmations. Then I printed out delivery confirmations for all the missing packages, cross-referenced with the security footage. I had an airtight case. That afternoon I knocked on her door. She answered looking irritated, like I was bothering her. I got straight to the point and told her my security system had recorded her taking my package that morning. I said I needed it back immediately or I would file a police report for theft. Her reaction was exactly what I expected from an entitled person caught red-handed. First came denial. She claimed she had no idea what I was talking about and suggested I was confused or lying. When I mentioned I had video evidence with timestamps, she shifted to gaslighting. She told me I was being ridiculous and paranoid. She said maybe she had been holding packages for me as a favor because I get too many deliveries and it looks bad for the building. She insisted that as my landlord, she had every right to manage what happens on her property. I stayed calm and repeated that I needed my package back within the hour or I would involve the police. I also mentioned that I had footage of several other incidents and would be happy to share everything with law enforcement. That got her attention. She disappeared upstairs for a few minutes and came back with my camera lens, still in its original packaging. She shoved it at me and muttered something about ungrateful tenants who don't appreciate when people try to help them. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I found a formal notice taped to my door. It was typed on official letterhead and looked like something her lawyer had helped draft. The document stated that my security system posed a safety hazard and liability risk for the building. It demanded that I provide her with full administrative access to the smart lock system within 24 hours. Specifically, she wanted the master access code and complete control over all user permissions. The notice claimed there was a clause in my lease requiring that the landlord have unrestricted access to all locks and security systems for emergency repairs and maintenance. The notice threatened immediate eviction proceedings and daily fines if I didn't comply. I read through my lease agreement word by word that night. The document did require that I provide the landlord with emergency access, which I had already done through the attorney-held physical key, but there was absolutely nothing about giving her administrative control over tenant-installed security systems. The more I thought about it, the more obvious her real motivation became. She was panicking because she'd been caught stealing and wanted to disable my security system so she could go back to taking my packages without evidence. That's when I decided to give her exactly what she asked for. The beauty of the security system I had chosen was its sophisticated administrative structure. The master administrator had complete control over all codes, user permissions, and system settings. Once someone became the master admin, they could lock out all other users, change access protocols, and essentially own the entire system. But the system also had an interesting security feature. During an administrative transfer, the new master admin was required to create their own master access code immediately. The previous admin's code was automatically deleted as part of the security protocol. This prevented situations where multiple people might have master-level access simultaneously. I logged into the administrative panel and initiated a formal transfer of master administrator privileges. The system prompted me to enter the email address of the new administrator. I typed in my landlord's email address, which I had from our lease paperwork. Next, the system required me to create a temporary transfer code that would allow the new administrator to claim their privileges. I generated a 20-digit hexadecimal code that looked something like this: a 3F7B9E2C8D15604F921E. The system automatically saved this as the new master access code and immediately deleted my previous administrator credentials. I was now completely locked out of my own system's administrative functions. I printed a professional-looking document on clean white paper and slid it under her door that evening. The title read, Administrative Access Transfer Confirmation Notice. The text explained that per her written demand dated the previous day, all master administrator rights for the security system had been successfully transferred to her email address. I included the timestamp of the transfer and confirmed that I had retained documentation of the compliance but no longer had access to system administration functions as per security protocol. I kept a copy of everything for my records and waited to see what would happen next. For 3 days, nothing happened. My landlord didn't contact me, didn't acknowledge the transfer, nothing. I figured she was probably trying to figure out how to use the system or maybe consulting with someone about her legal options. Then on Saturday morning, I heard shouting from upstairs. Apparently, she had decided to test her new administrative privileges by changing some system settings. Based on what I could hear through the ceiling, she had accidentally locked herself out of the admin panel entirely. She was on the phone with someone, probably a tech support line, getting increasingly frustrated. The shouting got louder over the next hour. I heard fragments of conversation about passwords, access codes, and system resets. At one point, she was clearly screaming at someone on the phone about how she needed to regain control of her own building's security system. By Sunday afternoon, she was knocking on my door. She looked like she hadn't slept much. Her hair was a mess, and she had that frantic energy of someone who had been dealing with technical problems for way too long. She demanded that I tell her the master access code or pay for whatever technical support was needed to fix the system. I remained completely calm and professional. I reminded her that she had demanded full administrative access in writing, which I had provided exactly as requested. I explained that the transfer confirmation document clearly stated I no longer had the master code or administrative privileges. I suggested she contact the manufacturer directly for technical support since she was now the registered system administrator. She started yelling about how I had sabotaged her and created this problem on purpose. I calmly explained that I had followed her written instructions precisely and provided exactly what she had demanded. If she was having difficulty managing the system, that was now her responsibility as the master administrator. She stormed off, threatening to sue me and get me evicted. Monday morning, I got a phone call from a company called Advanced Security Solutions. The representative explained that they had received an urgent service request from the registered administrator of my security system. She needed an emergency level 3 security override to regain administrative access. The technician explained that this was their most comprehensive service option, designed for situations where the master administrator had lost all access credentials to a high-security system. It required physically accessing the device's internal memory chip and completely reprogramming the administrative structure. Because of the proprietary nature of my system and the security protocols involved, this service could only be performed by their senior technical team. The cost was $5,000, payable by the registered master administrator before any work could begin. I told the representative I understood and that they should coordinate directly with the registered administrator since I was just a tenant and no longer had any involvement with system management. That afternoon, my landlord was back at my door. This time she had clearly been crying. She begged me to just tell her the access code so she wouldn't have to pay the service fee. She promised she would never bother me about the security system again and would leave my packages alone. I showed her the copies of her written demand and my compliance documentation. I explained that I had given her exactly what she asked for and that I genuinely no longer had the master access code. The system had been designed specifically to prevent situations where multiple people could have master-level access simultaneously. She offered to pay me to fix it. I explained that even if I wanted to help, I was completely locked out of the administrative functions. The only way to regain access was through the manufacturer's override service, which required payment from the registered administrator. Over the next week, she tried everything she could think of. She contacted a lawyer who confirmed that I had technically complied with her written demand. She tried calling the manufacturer multiple times to see if there was a cheaper option, but they explained that the security protocols were specifically designed to prevent unauthorized access, even by previous administrators. She even offered to split the cost with me, but I reminded her that the system was protecting my property and I had never wanted to transfer administrative control in the first place. She was the one who had demanded master access, so she was responsible for managing it. Finally, last Friday, she paid the $5,000. I watched from my office window as the Advanced Security Solutions van pulled up. 2 technicians spent about 4 hours working on my door's security panel. They had to partially disassemble the unit and connect specialized equipment to reprogram the internal memory. When they finished, they provided both of us with new access credentials. I received a standard user code that would allow me to enter my apartment. She received new master administrator privileges with a fresh access code that she would be responsible for managing going forward. The lead technician handed her a thick manual and explained that she would need to learn the system's administrative interface if she wanted to make any changes in the future. He also mentioned that any future technical support would be billed at standard rates to whichever administrator requested service. After the technicians left, she stood outside for a long time just staring at the manual. I don't think she had realized how complicated the system actually was, or how much responsibility came with master administrative access. She hasn't spoken to me since then. When we pass in the hallway, she looks away quickly and hurries past. I think the reality has finally sunk in that her entitlement and theft cost her $5,000 for absolutely nothing. My packages are safe again. The security system works perfectly, and I have exactly the same level of access I had before this whole mess started. The only difference is that now my landlord has spent more money than she probably makes in rent from my unit for several months. All because she couldn't resist stealing my deliveries and then demanding control over my security system. The best part is that everything was completely legal and above board. I have documentation showing that I complied precisely with her written demands. I followed the manufacturer's security protocols exactly as designed. There's absolutely nothing she can do about it now, except learn to manage the system she insisted on controlling. I've been reflecting on this whole situation, and I think there's an important lesson here about entitlement and overreach. She thought that being my landlord gave her the right to steal from me and then demand access to my personal security systems. She discovered that getting what you demand isn't always what you actually want. In her mind, she probably thought demanding the master code meant I would just hand over a simple password and she could do whatever she wanted. She never considered that master administrative access comes with master administrative responsibility. She wanted control without understanding what control actually meant. The technical complexity of the system wasn't something I created to trap her. It was designed that way specifically for security reasons. When you demand access to a high security system, you get all the complexity and responsibility that comes with it. She learned that lesson at a cost of $5,000. I think what bothers her most is that she played herself. I didn't trick her or mislead her about anything. I gave her exactly what she demanded in writing, following all proper procedures and manufacturer protocols. Her own entitlement and inability to understand what she was asking for created the entire problem. The irony is perfect. She tried to force me to give up control of my security system so she could continue stealing my packages. Instead, she ended up paying thousands of dollars to become responsible for managing a complex system she doesn't understand, while I still have the same level of security I always had. Sometimes the best revenge is just giving entitled people exactly what they ask for and letting them deal with the consequences. She wanted to be the master administrator of my security system so badly that she threatened eviction to get it. Now she is the master administrator, and she's learning that some victories come with a very expensive price tag. The fallout from this whole situation has been more extensive than I initially expected. Word travels fast in a small building, and the other tenants started asking questions when they saw the security company van parked outside for half a day. The tenant in the unit next to me mentioned that she had also been having problems with missing packages, but assumed it was just bad luck with the neighborhood. When I explained what had happened, she was shocked, but not entirely surprised. Apparently, my landlord had a history of being overly involved in tenant affairs and finding excuses to enter people's apartments for questionable maintenance issues. The tenant across the hall shared a similar story. She said my landlord had once demanded a spare key to her apartment safe because it was technically installed in the building she owned. When the tenant refused, my landlord tried to claim it violated some non-existent lease clause about unauthorized safes. That situation ended when the tenant threatened to contact a lawyer. Hearing these stories made me realize that my situation wasn't an isolated incident. My landlord had a pattern of overstepping boundaries and trying to exert control over things that were none of her business. The difference was that I had the technical knowledge and resources to fight back effectively. About a week after the technicians finished their work, my landlord made another attempt to resolve the situation. She knocked on my door one evening looking exhausted and defeated. She asked if we could sit down and have a reasonable conversation about everything that had happened. I invited her in, but kept the conversation brief and factual. She admitted that she had made mistakes and said she never intended for things to escalate the way they did. She claimed the package situation was just a misunderstanding and that she really had been trying to keep them safe for me. I listened politely but didn't buy her explanation for a second. The security footage showed her taking packages immediately after delivery and keeping them for days or weeks without any attempt to notify me. That's not someone trying to be helpful, that's someone stealing. She then tried a different approach. She offered to reduce my rent by $200 per month if I would help her get out of the administrative responsibilities for the security system. She said managing it was too complicated and stressful, and she just wanted everything to go back to how it was before. I explained that even if I wanted to help, which I didn't, the system's security protocols made it impossible to simply transfer administrative rights back and forth. Any change in master administrator would require another expensive override service from the manufacturer. She would have to pay for that service herself since she was the current registered administrator. The conversation ended with her asking if there was anything she could do to make the situation better. I told her the best thing she could do was learn to properly manage the system she had demanded access to and respect my privacy and property going forward. I also mentioned that I had kept copies of all the security footage showing the package thefts just in case any future issues arose. That seemed to get the message across clearly. She hasn't bothered me since then. The technical aftermath has been interesting to watch from a distance. About 2 weeks after getting the new administrative access, she must have tried to modify some settings because I noticed the system's status lights behaving differently. Whatever she did caused some kind of configuration error because the next day, there was another service van outside. I later learned from one of the other tenants that she had accidentally disabled some of the system's basic functions while trying to create a master key override for herself. The repair cost was only a few $100s this time, but it was another reminder that complex systems require proper knowledge to manage safely. The manufacturer's technician who came for the repair apparently spent an hour trying to explain the administrative interface to her. According to my neighbor who was outside when this happened, the technician kept emphasizing that the system was designed for technically sophisticated users and might be too advanced for typical property management needs. That conversation must have been humbling for someone who thought demanding master access would be simple. The best part of this whole experience has been the complete change in my landlord's behavior toward me. Before this situation, she was constantly finding reasons to contact me about minor lease issues or building policies. She would show up unannounced to inspect things or complain about noise levels during normal daytime hours. Now, she goes out of her way to avoid any interaction with me. When rent is due, she just emails a brief reminder instead of her previous habit of calling to discuss payment timing and methods. When there are building-wide maintenance issues, she handles them through written notices instead of individual conversations with each tenant. The other tenants have noticed the change too. My neighbor mentioned that our landlord seems much less aggressive about enforcing minor rules and regulations since the security system incident. It's like she finally understands that her tenants aren't just sources of income she can push around without consequences. I think the $5,000 lesson taught her something valuable about the difference between having authority and exercising it responsibly. She had legitimate authority as a building owner, but she abused it by stealing packages and making unreasonable demands. When she tried to use that authority to cover up her bad behavior, it cost her serious money. The security system continues to work perfectly. I get delivery notifications in real time, the cameras capture everything clearly, and my packages are completely secure. The facial recognition system has logged hundreds of legitimate deliveries without any problems. More importantly, it has logged 0 instances of unauthorized package removal since the administrative transfer. I've actually been impressed with how well the system handles complex situations. Last month I had a delivery scheduled during a client meeting, so I created a temporary access code for the delivery driver and monitored the handoff through my phone. The whole process worked seamlessly, and I had complete documentation of the delivery without interrupting my work. The manufacturer has also been excellent to work with. They send periodic software updates that add new features and improve security protocols. Having a properly configured system with legitimate administrative oversight makes these updates simple and automatic. I've recommended the same security setup to several friends who work from home and deal with valuable shipments. The peace of mind is worth every penny, especially when you factor in the cost of replacing stolen items and dealing with insurance claims. Looking back on everything that happened, I'm satisfied with how I handled the situation. I never escalated unnecessarily, never made personal attacks, and never violated any rules or laws. I simply gave an entitled person exactly what she demanded and let the natural consequences play out. The whole experience reinforced something important about dealing with bullies and entitled people. Sometimes the most effective response isn't to fight back directly, but to give them exactly what they think they want. Most entitled people don't actually understand the full implications of their demands. They just assume they can get what they want without dealing with any downside. My landlord thought she could steal from me and then demand control over my security system to continue stealing without consequences. She learned that demanding master administrative access means accepting master administrative responsibility, including the costs and complexity that come with it. She wanted power without accountability, control without consequence, and authority without expertise. The security system's design made those things impossible, and her own demands trapped her into a situation she couldn't handle. The $5,000 she paid taught her a lesson that no amount of arguing or explaining could have accomplished. Sometimes experience is the only teacher that entitled people will listen to, especially when that experience comes with a significant financial cost. I still live in the same apartment and plan to stay here for the foreseeable future. The location is perfect for my work, the space meets all my needs, and now I know my landlord won't be causing any more problems. She learned her lesson the expensive way, and I learned that sometimes the best revenge is just being smarter than the people who try to take advantage of you. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I work at a massive company in corporate. Great place, but unfortunately was stuck under a micromanaging director who had random neurotic episodes. Our team was always burnt out because if Mr. Director saw you leave your desk for any reason, like to go to the bathroom, get water, or take a lunch break, he took that as you not being busy enough and would pile on even more useless work. And if you left a minute before 5:05, he got really upset. Oh, and forget about working from home. Everyone else did. Finally, the time came for the big international trip I had been planning for years that was now possible after COVID. I hardly took time off and slaved away the whole year while my friends on other teams enjoyed life. We were more pressured this year to always be working and not take time off. We had so much work we couldn't even take time off. I ensure everything is wrapped up first. Plus, it's December, so most people are out anyway. Take my 1.5-week trip and had an amazing time. Fast forward a month, and my manager, who reports to Mr. Director, tells me that I need to watch out and not take so much vacation. He states matter-of-factly that I need to be more careful about using my days, and I've actually run out of time to take off what? We're checking vacation days? I was shocked as we were repeatedly told that we should not log our days in the system because they aren't checking. It's an honor system. And nobody cares how many days you take if it's reasonable. I ask, what should I do differently? I always check well in advance and add it on your calendar. Should I start logging my days in the system? How is that possible if I have at least a week left? I keep track myself. He won't give me a straight answer and is super vague. Okay, since we're now tracking vacation days, I'll make sure I log everything in the system. I went in and backlogged all of the days I had ever taken off prior years. Weeks upon weeks of PTO. Even needed HR approval since some were so long ago. Manager had to go in and approve every single request since it notifies you and requires you to respond. Going forward, I submitted everything. And yes, I had plenty of PTO left. Manager starts getting annoyed, says that I really don't need to log time off. I stop him right there. But I thought I was taking too much vacation. We all need to be sure that we're being truthful about the honor system. He doesn't know what to say. Later, a teammate tells me what really went down. Turns out one day, Mr. Director decided that his team was taking too much time off, that all the useless work he assigned was not getting done. He had one of his tantrums and started freaking out and tracked down every day off, doctor's appointment, sick day, etc. that our team of 8 people had taken going back at least a year. He was checking calendars, digging up emails, asking other people if they saw us this day or that. Even though he had told us time and time again, you don't need to log your days, we're not checking. But because Mr. Director was a B-cluster narcissist, he was much too busy and important to take up his concerns with us lowly employees directly, or to talk things through like an adult and get all the facts first, but not too busy to account for every hour I wasn't at work. This would be one of many infractions that came out of nowhere. Mr. Director was also an extremely difficult person to work with. Other teams did not want to work with our team. He treated people poorly, and I can't tell you how many people flat out hated him. And guess what? Nobody had used anywhere near all their PTO. There were 0 performance concerns, and we were an extremely high-performing team due to the constant fear of setting him off. I always asked for feedback and got nothing. Yet coworkers with planned family trips were getting pressured into pushing them back again and again and again because Mr. Director needed them there sitting at their desk in case something important came up. Meanwhile, Mr. Director made sure to use more than his allotted PTO days and frequently took week-long trips. I made sure to use the rest of my PTO days since they were now being tracked. Mr. Director actually tried to stop it, but I threatened to take it up with HR since I had plenty of time left, and he backed off. Thankfully, I escaped that team and moved internally. I was doing so much work, much of it technical for a non-technical team, that nobody knew how to do it. Mr. Director was frantically reaching out to me and demanding me to fix stuff, even though I spent my last 2 weeks documenting and transitioning over everything. I chose to ignore him, and it felt great. My old teammates still there are miserable. The people that replaced us are already trying to leave. One guy who'd been with the company for years completely left the company a month after joining this team when realizing his mistake. The next one is an entitled people story. I'm compiling multiple experiences I've had with people who decided to cut in line or try to skip the lines. The oldest one I can remember was from a few years back when I was in line at the pharmacy before they added in any sort of features to delineate where the line was. When I was getting my cart inside the store, I saw an older man walking in with what I assume was his adult son or grandson. I went straight to the pharmacy and was waiting in line when the younger man got behind me. The old man then walked up along the side and started cursing me, calling me an idiot, saying I cut in line. He was there before I was and started telling the young man to push that stupid idiot and take my place in line. The son was cringing and muttering apologies to me under his breath. The old man was going on a rant about what a stupid idiot I was, how he was in the store before I was, and that I shouldn't be in line before the young man. I'm guessing the young man dealt with that crap a lot because he mostly remained silent and put his hand over his face. I just smiled at the old man. He started saying that he'd have his boy punch that smile right off my face. I laughed at him and he ranted but didn't come anywhere near me. Too much of a coward to try to fight me himself over some perceived slight. He screamed at the young man for not doing anything, and then it was my turn to go up and the old man just yelled while I got my stuff and walked away. A few years later, same pharmacy, they changed the way the lines worked and had a sort of cordoned off area and lines you had to stand behind. I was waiting my turn when some old man, it always seems to be old men, just rushed up to one of the pharmacy counters and said something to the clerk. He then started yelling about how the doctor prescribed him ivermectin and he wanted it, and something about driving 100 miles. They were telling him there was no such prescription, and he was arguing and then yelling about his meds not being ready and carrying on, calling the clerk stupid and just hogging the spot. I finally said, "Dude, STFU and get out of the way. Other people are waiting on their meds. You're not the only person waiting. Either wait for your meds on the bench or walk away, but stop blocking the line after you cut to the front when it wasn't even your turn." The clerk had been telling him to move out of the way, and he was just yelling at her. I told him to stop yelling at her because it wasn't her fault if the doctor didn't call in something for him and that he was being an asshole and needed to leave. The clerk had to tell him they would call the cops if he didn't leave, and that seemed to do the trick. He flipped her off and flipped me off, called us both idiots, and stormed off. The person behind me in line said, "Finally, what an asshole," when he left. About a year ago, I was in line for self-checkout because it was the only checkout open at the time, at Walmart, and a young male employee with a flatbed cart. He rammed it into my cart and then stepped in front of me in line and rushed up when the next self-checkout machine opened. Nothing much I could do other than tell him, "I would have let you go ahead if you'd asked me nicely, asshole." Then there was a more recent time in Sam's Club. I forget why I was in the customer service line, but things were slow and I'd been waiting for about 15 minutes. I was next in line and there were several people behind me. Then some old dude walked up and started looking at the line from the side. He made eye contact with me briefly, and as soon as the person at the register walked away, he rushed up to cut in line and shoved his card in the clerk's face. She very politely told him that there was a line and he needed to wait his turn. He argued, and she again told him that he had to wait in line because he couldn't just cut in front of customers like that. He had a mini tantrum and stormed off. Clerk gave me a big smile when I walked up and I thanked her. I can understand if someone asks to cut in line and is told yes, or if they don't see that someone is in line, but some of these people are just assholes. If I see someone with ice cream or just one item or holding a heavy item without a card, I will often tell them to go ahead of me. But I have zero tolerance for people who jump a QBC. They think they are more important than everyone else. Anyway, thank you for watching.